Well, there used to be a payphone here. This is the Brooklyn Bridge subway station. That's a pretty old New York telephone. Bit of signage there. And I'm sure there were plenty of other phones in this station at some point. Let me see what's happening upstairs. Well, this one is on Spruce Street, near Park Row. And there's no dial tone, but it does make a little clicking noise. Okay, I dialed 311 and it said thank you. But without dial tone, I don't think this is actually going to connect. Yeah. Invalid number. This is right outside of Pace University. Used to be a bunch of electronic shops down here. I love Lower Manhattan. There's only two parts of New York I'd want to live in besides where I am already. That's Lower Manhattan and Midtown Manhattan. I guess I missed my chance to buy cheap after 9/11. You can barely see the Freedom Tower. You know, pigeons are a good metaphor for this payphone hunting. I don't know about a metaphor, but I think you're as likely to be able to communicate with other people via carrier pigeon than by New York City payphones. That's another no dial tone for you. I was last down Lower Manhattan probably 2 months ago. There were still plenty of payphones down here, but a few casualties. I don't think I found a single one that worked, though. This one's on Beekman Street. Has the very familiar Vita Coco coconut water ad. Seen on so many phones around town. Hey, dial tone. Magical. Let's see what the number is. Or what. Or rather, just see if this thing actually can make a call. Five 164027577. Yep, another coconut water ad. On all three panels. I don't want to step out into the street. Jeez, it's like you have almost the entire alphabet here. Anyway. There are no payphones in the Freedom Tower. Somewhere on my site I have a photo of a row of phones at the old Twin Towers. There are a whole tons and tons of them in the basement, or the lower levels. But yeah, that was not on their priority when they built this new tower. But there are tons of phones in the area still. Of course, most of them don't work. I was working at CNN on September 11th, 2001, and I was part of a team of reporters and photographers that came down here on September 17th, the Monday after when the stock exchange reopened. A memorable experience, to say the least. And I'm with most people in saying that I really kind of hate this thing. That's cool. A helicopter's about to land on it, or fly around it, rather. There's a pretty amazing photo on somewhere on my website. Of a payphone, somebody using a payphone on September 11th. And we don't know his story or who he was or where he was going, but he was carrying a whole bunch of bottles of water and using, if it wasn't this exact payphone, it was a phone very close to the spot on Vesey Street, and you could see the smoldering tower or the smoke behind him, but the one tower was still standing. The first one had already come down. And it's a haunting picture, it really is. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so here's the shot. James Florio is the photographer. And by his account, this was on Vesey Street, near Broadway. And now that I see this picture again, there's no way that phone that is out there today is the same one, because he's talking on a low-rise clamshell enclosure phone, whereas the one that I recorded yesterday is a full-size enclosure. I actually paid for advertising when I posted this photo to my site. I was hoping somebody would recognize this guy, and we could get his story or see if he even made it. He has a wedding band, so maybe he's talking to his wife. And the photographer was able to determine the time by this dude's watch. 10:15. Let me see what he said here. I'm looking at his email from yeah, that's about all I had to say about it. It is a cool shot, but I didn't find this until 2014, and by then I think a lot of people were just getting tired of this kind of thing, getting tired of talking about 9/11 or going back to the shocking imagery. You can see some of the rubble on top of the payphone enclosure and all over the handset. Anyway, cool shot. No dial tone here. The photographer was Jason Florio, by the way. I purchased the rights to the photo for my site. I don't know if this is art in ad places or what, but it's obviously not an ad. Art in ad places is a group of artists that they use a generic key to open these advertising cabinets, and they overlay the advertising with art. And usually there's some statement or some, there'll be a painting or there'll be a wall of text or something. I don't know if this is that, but it could be. This is well within their style. Maiden Lane is like a virtual abundance of payphones. There were 4 of them that I passed on the way down here, 2 in a row here. No dial tone and no coin box either. And once again, I keep forgetting to do this. It's my payphone radio card. No dial tone, but there is a slight crackling noise. Not a lot of graffiti to speak of in these Lower Manhattan phones, unlike Midtown and other areas. This is Maiden Lane near Nassau Street. I dated a woman for a while who lived down here on the day of the 9/11 attacks. She was living on Gold Street, which is basically right across the street from the Twin Towers. And she said she woke up and heard all these people screaming. There was all this hysteria going on, and she didn't really understand what was happening. Of course, nobody really did at first. So she hears all these screaming and all these people screaming, and then she goes to the bathroom to take a bubble bath and shuts the door. And when she opened the door, all the screaming had stopped. So those were the people who fled to the roof of the building thinking helicopters were going to swoop in and pluck them up to safety. But that never happened. On September 11th, I came out of the 34th Street Herald Square subway station to go to work at CNN. The first plane flew right over my head, and I heard the engine rumbling, and I saw the bottom of the plane. I thought, that's a damn low-flying plane. But other than that, I didn't think much of it. By the time I got up to the newsroom, there were TVs everywhere, and they were already showing live video of the first plane that hit the building. And by the time I sat down at my desk, the second plane struck. And that's when everybody started saying, this is deliberate. This is a deliberate attack. So I called my mother, and I told her to turn on the TV. And I told her, we're being attacked. But that I was okay. And I didn't really put the first plane flew over my head part of the puzzle together until later. 9/11 was the first day I ever walked over the New York City bridge. I had to walk home from 34th Street, 9th Avenue, all the way to Astoria. It's probably about 6 miles. This was before I really did a lot of epic long walks, so that was a memorable part of the equation. I think it was about 45 minutes after the second tower came down that a bunch of CNN techies arrived at our office, and they had just escaped. They just barely escaped the collapse, because we had some offices down there, and those guys were pretty high strung. I like the little baby gargoyles. This one is at Bieber Street and William Street. And I'll say this much for Lower Manhattan phones: they're a lot less vandalized than other areas. Ones around Union Square and Chinatown were like, almost all of them were coated in graffiti. But this one is as close to vandalized as I found down here. No dial tone, of course. And that's another familiar ad on a lot of payphones around town, the harassmentlawfirm.com. Well, looks like somebody tried to use this one. Let's see if they had any luck. This is actually on Wall Street. No dial tone, but a slight crackling sound. Suggests this thing might have some life left in it, but probably doesn't have much time left. So now I'm at Pearl Street and Wall Street, on Wall Street. And this is another one where somebody with a special kind of OCD has been going around tying these cords up in knots. And it's some unfortunate individual's job to untie them. And this is hardly the most complicated or intense knot that I've seen. Some of them get really, really extreme. So this one's at Pearl and Pine, and this app panel is gone. Nothing but some bare bulbs. There's the good old Vita Coco coconut water ad. And there it is again. This could be a payphone. Oh, but it doesn't look like it. The phones that are lower down like this were installed after 1990. By which time she was assumed to have passed away. tone. And no prey either. But there's that fancy knot again. This is one of the things I love about Lower Manhattan, is all these narrow little side streets. This is Gold Street. I guess this is where that woman I dated, who I mentioned earlier, would have lived in one of these buildings on September 11th. When I came down here on September 17th, I wasn't intending to be assuming the role of a photographer. I was the technology guy on this assignment, and I was supposed to deliver the photos back to the newsroom wirelessly, which was kind of a newfangled, a high-tech thing to be doing in 2001. But I ended up just taking a lot of pictures, and the photo editor liked them enough that I ended up getting a couple of photo credits on CNN.com, and they're probably still there. And I think they were used on TV too. So there's my little accidental claim to fame, right? I was the technology director at the time. Like, I was in charge of the tech end of the web stuff, but and I didn't really consider myself a photographer, but I mean, I did and I didn't. But I'm not seeing a lot of yellow mats down here in Lower Manhattan, but here's one on Fulton Street. I saw a row of 3 earlier, I think, on Maiden Lane, but that was a street that still had 7 or 8 phones on it. Of course, none of them work, so what does it matter? Well, here's a cool find. This is the piece of street furniture that essentially replaced the payphone, not in form, but not in function, but in form. The ATM, the gypsy ATM, or the independently owned ATM, are often found on the exact spot where a payphone used to be. And it's not really any coincidence, because a lot of the same individuals that owned the payphones got into the ATM business. But this one is obviously not usable. It feels like I shouldn't be allowed to see this, you know? The inner workings of a cash machine. And Hyosung seems to be a leader in manufacturing of these ATMs. I don't know if a payphone actually did stand on this spot, but I have seen numerous instances of ATMs where that's the case. And you can't help but predict the decline of these things too, as more and more people go cashless. So if you're got out of payphones and got into ATMs, you might be in for another lost cause. Here's another one of those cool little side streets. Exchange Alley. You know, I never understood my mother's attitude about 9/11. When I called to tell her what was happening, she turned on the TV and she came back and she's just like, this is nothing compared to the bombing of London in World War II. And, you know, in retrospect, maybe she had a point, but Just didn't seem like comforting words in a time of what we thought was a situation that was going to continue to escalate. And she never really, my mother never really took any of it seriously until the anthrax attacks came down to Florida, where she was living. But she always thought it was just something, she just didn't want to talk about it. She just didn't want to talk about it. There's always a lot of activity around the Wall Street Bull. Gosh, I hope that's not a bag of bull poop. Bag of bullshit. So there should still be some payphones over here by the museum. The National Museum of the American Indian. I thought we quit using that term a long time ago. So let me get through here. But first there's this one at Bieber and Broadway, Bieber Street and Broadway. This is a payphone. All the prayers in the world don't get you dial tone. There she is. What was kind of funny about this one, about this phone, is there's no actual pray, but here somebody scratched the word rooster. And I don't know if there's some inside joke at play here, but wouldn't that be funny if instead of religious messages, instead of pray and go to church, wouldn't that be crazy if she went around just scratching words like rooster, livestock, chicken. So this is the Museum of the American Indian. And that's not a payphone, although it sort of looks like it would be of that vintage. So there's two phones over there, and then there's two over here. No dial tone on either of these. I'm pretty sure these numbers are all listed on my website. I'm heading into the Staten Island Ferry Terminal for a bathroom break, for one thing. I'm pretty sure the terminal will accommodate me in that respect. But I also want to show what happened to the payphones that are here. I guess they're still in the same state as the last time I was here, so let's find out. Okay, well, there's a welcome change here. I last came down here kind of when the pandemic was really burning at full tilt. Must have been March or April. And these phones were all covered with garbage bags. And I'll dig up my pictures of that. They do keep the charging stations closed, but the payphones look like they might be usable again. Let's find out. Has dial tone. And I think this phone works. How about that? That's quite a departure from their earlier policy. They just thought that the phones represented too much of a risk for COVID transmission. And it is hard to think of a likelier conduit, but looks like they shifted gear. Yep. I just connected to the dial-up pair. Let's get the number. Okay. Well, that one worked. Okay. Okay. He's telling me they don't work, even though I just made a call on one of them. I'm not going to go over to Staten Island today, but I'll assume they took the bags off of those too. Yeah, this is what the this is what these phones looked like back in August. I think I said yesterday that I first spotted these in March or April, but then I realized there's no way I was going into places like this when the pandemic was at full tilt. So I don't know when these actually went up, but sometime between August and now they were removed. And I love this huge sign. It's like they might as well put an exclamation point after it instead of a handset. So I hopped a train up to Chambers Street, and I actually didn't have this phone in mind. I forgot this one is here, but I should have gotten photos of this about a year ago, if I remember right. This one.
Train to South Ferry, 1 minute away.
So this one does not work, and I don't think this one's ever coming back. It's been dead for at least a year, probably a lot longer than that. There's a phone across the street here. I'm up on Broadway at Warren Street now. There's a phone across the street here that looks like it might be a payphone. Looks like the right vintage with the black frame. Let's see. There's a bold claim. Somebody's a sex machine. Good to know. It's not a payphone. for today's little trip. It's the most vandalized one I've found. This is gonna be my last one for today. I don't want to let my battery get down to 1% like it did yesterday. Although somehow that 1% always seems to last longer than the 99% that you burned earlier. That is the Supreme Court building, 60 Center Street, and it serves as a lofty backdrop for this payphone, which I just checked has no dial tone. And for some reason the Titan brand, which is on the top of virtually every City Bridge payphone, is blanked out. And it looks very deliberate. This one's only lightly vandalized. This one hasn't worked in probably 2 or 3 years. And this does look like it could be a payphone, but it's not. So this is Center Street near Pearl Street near Foley Square, or on Foley Square. Man, this park's deserted. I mean, there's just nobody here.